Ni hao ma, everybody. In today's episode, we're going to be editing the footage I shot previously in episode 2. I'm just going to show you guys roughly what my workflow consists of in terms of organization, basic editing, and color grading. One thing I'd like to emphasize is that there is no one correct way to edit. There's hundreds of ways to edit and everyone has their own way of doing it. It's basically things I've learned on my own in the past years, because honestly, college didn't teach me jack shit. Before we begin, let's make sure to be as organized as can be. I usually have 3 subfolders: an audio folder which will hold all my audio files such as exhaust and intake sound, a footage folder obviously for all the video, and then a project folder. This folder will hold all the autosave files and the project file itself. Alright, so we are going to be using Premiere Pro for the editing. You're definitely going to want a second monitor. 3 monitors is good too. Alright, let's start this bitch. Let's create a new project. I'm gonna title this CTR Cinematic. We're gonna go ahead and place this in that folder I created within the subfolder called Project. We're gonna go ahead and select that. Okay. Now let's go ahead and make a new sequence. Alright, DSLR 1080p at 24 frames per second. That's the preset. I did shoot everything in 4K. However, Instagram does not support 4K resolution, so I'm gonna have to downscale. Let's title this sequence, and then let's check the settings and make sure everything's all good. Here are all your frame rates. I'm gonna leave mine at 23.976. 1920 by 1080, that's gonna give us a 16:9 aspect ratio. Everything else looks good. Okay. Alright, in our project bin, you'll see the sequence we just created. Let's go ahead and import all of our clips. I'm just gonna go ahead and drag it in. Bloop. Drag in the audio as well. Here is our audio files in a separate folder. So here are all the project files that we're gonna be using. I usually set this panel onto my second monitor. So having 3 monitors is definitely going to make your life easier. Having 2 at minimum is good enough, but sometimes I like to use a third TV just because my eyesight gets pretty strained if I edit all day. So when I go back to my dual monitor setup, this is what it would look like. You have your source preview and effects, your actual preview panel. As you can see, the timeline is a lot smaller, you got less space to work with. And then all the source files, so you don't have to jump back and forth. You can easily just go from one monitor to the other. So on our timeline, we have video tracks and audio tracks. If you want to add some tracks, go ahead and just right click here, add tracks. And let's say I don't want to add a video track, I'll go ahead and put 0 over here, and then if I want to add 2 audio tracks, I'll just add 2. Okay, and voila, we have added 2 audio tracks. If you want to delete any tracks, just right click on the track and delete. Boom, easy. When it comes to music, what I find works best for me personally is selecting a track prior to filming. So even before shooting, I always plan out a shot list and I play it in my head along with the music multiple times. Alright, let's go ahead and listen to the song. This is going to be for Instagram, so the maximum duration is 1 minute. Obviously, this song is over a minute, so we're going to have to choose a minute of this song. Alright, I've chosen to start the video at 34 seconds. Let's go ahead and skip a minute and see where this song progresses. We're going to be able to use this portion to end the video. In some cases, you might not be so lucky. You might have to edit the song and shorten it. In this case, we got really lucky. The minute that we are going to use naturally flows. Okay, let's go ahead and grab our music track. Now, if I were to drag the music into the timeline, you'll see that it drags the entire track. We don't want that. Since we know we want to start the song at 34 seconds, I'm going to go ahead and put my in point at 34 seconds by pressing I on the keyboard. Then we're going to go to a minute and 34 seconds. And we're going to set our out point by pressing O on the keyboard. Now if we drag that, we're only taking what we need since we set our in and out points. Go ahead and delete that. Alright, let's start editing. Let's go select a video clip. Now we're going to find a usable portion. Right here is good. I'll press I, set my endpoint, and right here is good. I'm going to press O, that's my out point. Alright, let's drag this down into the timeline. You're going to notice that it is pretty cropped in. That's because we shot all of our source footage in 4K. Obviously, this is a 1080p sequence, so these two resolutions do not match. All you got to do is go to your effects controls, go to your scale setting, and set it to 50. There we go. Now it's fitting the screen. Next thing you're going to want to do is slow down the footage. Just right click, hit speed duration, and set the speed to 50%. We've basically doubled the length of the video, and now we have more room to play with. Okay, I'm noticing that the image is not level. So I'll go to my effects controls again, go to the rotation setting. I think 2 degrees should be good. Now we're getting some black borders at the edge. We don't want that. Easy fix, go back to scale, set it to maybe 55. Yep, we're good. And this is what you're left with. If you don't want to manually mess with the scale settings for each clip individually, like I'm showing you right now, a shortcut is to right click a clip that already is scaled to 50, copy. Now you're going to go ahead and highlight all the clips that you want to be scaled to 50 as well. Go ahead and right click and then select paste attributes. Now what that does is it gives you the option to paste whatever attributes you want. And since scale is a motion attribute, we're gonna leave motion checked. Press OK. Now every single clip has been scaled to 50. That's gonna save you a lot of time. Now there's nothing left for me to do but just start my general edit. I'll see you guys in a few minutes. Here we have a clip that's a little bit shaky. That's normal. Sometimes rollers won't be perfect. The road might be kind of bumpy. Easy fix. Just grab warp stabilizer and drop it onto your clip. Alright, let's check it out now. I think 50% might be a little too strong, so I'm going to go ahead and just set it at 15%. Alright, so here is the original clip. Pretty shaky. And then here is the same clip with 15% warp stabilizer. Alright, let's go do some audio. I'm gonna grab an exhaust clip. Let's give it a listen. Now I'm gonna select a portion that I'm gonna use. Okay, now let's listen. Next up is the intake. Alright, everything sounds good. Now we are in a tunnel, so I'm gonna go ahead and use convolution reverb. Drag it onto the clip. And what I like to do to imitate a tunnel, I'm going to go to under the bridge. Then we're going to select, let's see, where is it? There it is, endless tunnel. Do the same for the intake. Alright, now, so we gotta be careful with our audio levels. We are peaking, it's in the red. So I'm just gonna right click, select audio gain, and then decrease the decibels.
That shit good.
Okay, moving on, let's go ahead and start color grading. We're gonna go to the color tab. Here you'll see all your basic corrections. You can do stuff like color temperature, you can go cooler or warmer. I suggest setting your white balance properly during the shoot, but if you were using auto white balance, this is where you can adjust a couple things. Alright, moving down, I usually just leave the exposure alone. Here is your contrast settings, highlights, here are your shadows. You can either bring up the shadows or crush them. Crushing your shadows can give you a more dramatic look. Over here is your creative panel. Let's go ahead and check out some of these presets. I kind of like this Kodak 5205 look, but I think it's a little too intense. I'm just gonna bring it down to 70%. Now it does look a little greenish. There's a bit of a green tint in this image now. All you gotta do is just go back to your basic corrections and add a bit of magenta. Magenta is gonna be able to cancel out the green tint. Now I think for this look, I'm gonna go ahead and make it a little bit of a cooler temperature. And this faded film effect is gonna give you that kind of Instagram filter look. I try not to put it too high. I'm gonna go ahead and just set it at 20. I think that's good enough. And here we have vibrance and saturation, which is pretty self-explanatory. Now over here on your curves, this is where you can start isolating some colors. For example, if you want to get rid of that yellow, this yellow parking stone, you can go ahead and just make a point over here. Let's make another point. That's going to target just the yellows. We're going to go ahead and bring it down. Now as you can see, the yellow is muted. That's basically it. This is just a pretty basic way to color grade in Premiere Pro. So now I'm just gonna render my sequence, and I'm also gonna render the audio. Review your edit, and if you're happy, now we can go export. Alright, now we're ready to export our video. I'm gonna select the destination to be the same folder that we created. Make sure everything looks good. We're doing 1920 by 1080 resolution, 23.976 frame rate. I'm gonna leave these alone, and I'm gonna check render at maximum depth. I'm gonna leave all these encoding settings. These are okay. These are okay as well. I'm gonna leave these alone. Now we finally reached bitrate settings. Over here you'll see CBR, VBR 1 pass, and then VBR 2 pass. I'm going to select 2 pass because initially the first pass is going to analyze it, then it's going to pass through again and render it. It's going to take twice as long to render, but you're going to get a better quality video. Now the target bitrate and the maximum bitrate you can increase depending on what you need. It's just going to affect your file size. I've found that what works best for a 1080p video is target bitrate to be set at 10 and the maximum bitrate set at 12. The bitrate values will change depending on the resolution and frame rate of each video you're exporting. Alright, and then last we're going to make sure use maximum render quality is checked. Then we're going to go ahead and export. hope you guys enjoyed episode 3. If you're curious how I shot the rollers and recorded audio, please stay tuned for episode 4, where I'll show you how to film high-speed rollers and capture high-quality audio.